The message came at midnight, Earth time. Elena Vance was sitting in her small apartment on Luna Station when her communication screen lit up with a symbol she had only seen in old history files. It was the seal of the Galactic Concord, a circle of 12 stars arranged around a single bright point. The symbol of the elder races, the rulers of known space. She read the message 3 times before she believed it was real. Humanity had been called before the full Council of 12. This had not happened to any young species in over 3,000 years. The charges were serious. The punishment could be devastating. Elena did not sleep that night. She was 47 years old. She had gray streaks in her dark hair and lines around her eyes from years of difficult work. She had spent 20 years as a diplomat. First on Earth, then on the colony worlds, and finally in the cold halls of alien stations, where humans were still seen as newcomers, children, pests. Humanity had only been part of the galactic community for 40 years. In that time, they had built 17 colony worlds and established trade routes with a dozen species. They had worked hard to prove themselves. They had followed the rules. They had been careful, and now, it seemed, none of that mattered. The charges were clear. Humanity had attacked 2 outposts belonging to the Threnkai Dominion in a region called the Velix Corridor. This region was supposed to be empty. A buffer zone. No species was allowed to claim it or use it for military purposes. But humanity had sent warships there. They had destroyed the outposts. They had killed Threnkai soldiers. The Concord wanted answers. The Threnkai wanted blood. Elena packed a small bag. She took only what she needed, a change of clothes, her diplomatic credentials, a data chip containing files she had gathered over the past 2 weeks. Files that told a very different story from the one the Concord had heard. She did not bring guards. She did not bring a fleet. She did not even bring an assistant. When her superiors on Earth asked her why she wanted to go alone, she gave them a simple answer. Because they expect us to come with weapons, she said. They expect us to come with threats. They expect us to act like the violent children they think we are. I will not give them that satisfaction. The journey to Axiom Prime took 6 days. Axiom Prime was the neutral station where the Council of 12 held their meetings. It was ancient beyond measure. Some said it had been built by a species that died out before any of the current elder races had even evolved. It floated in the empty space between galaxies, a monument to powers that no longer existed. Elena's ship was tiny compared to the vessels of the elder races. As she approached the station, she passed cruisers the size of small moons. She passed living ships that swam through space like great whales. She passed crystal structures that sang with energy and light. Her ship was gray and functional. It had no weapons. It had no shields worth mentioning. It was the kind of ship a messenger would use. A servant. A nobody, the elder races noticed. When Elena docked at the station, she was met by a Vormakine official. The Vormakine were tall and thin, with blue-gray skin and 4 arms. They considered themselves the administrators of the galaxy. They kept records. They enforced rules. They looked down on everyone. This official looked at Elena with barely hidden disgust. "You are the human representative?" he asked. "I am Ambassador Elena Vance, of the United Earth Government," she replied. "Just you? No delegation? No military escort?" "Just me." The official's thin lips twisted into something like a smile. "How unusual. The council will find this most interesting." He led her through the station's corridors. The walls were made of a material that seemed to shift and change color as she walked past. The air smelled strange, not bad, but alien, like flowers that had never grown on Earth. Other species passed them in the halls. Most of them ignored Elena completely. A few stared at her with curiosity. One, a massive creature covered in thick brown fur, actually laughed when it saw her. "That is a Koroth," the Vormakine official said, noticing her glance. "They find humans amusing. Something about your size, I believe." "I see," Elena said calmly. "They also find your species' ambition amusing. You have been part of the galactic community for less than 50 years, and already you start wars. The Koroth have been civilized for 60,000 years. They learned patience long ago. Elena did not respond to this. She simply kept walking. The official led her to a small chamber near the main council hall. It was bare except for a single chair and a small table. The walls were gray. There were no windows. "You will wait here until you are summoned," the official said. "It may be several hours. The council has many matters to discuss before they deal with your situation." "Oh, I understand," Elena said. The official paused at the door. He seemed to want to say something else. Finally, he spoke. "A word of advice, human. The council does not respond well to arrogance. They have seen species rise and fall for millions of years. They have seen empires that spanned entire galaxies crumble to dust. Whatever you think you know, whatever you think you have achieved, it is nothing to them. Remember that when you stand before them." Elena looked at him steadily. "Thank you for the advice." The official left. The door sealed behind him. Elena sat down in the chair. She placed her hands on her knees and closed her eyes. She thought about the files on her data chip. She thought about the 60,000 people who had been taken from their colony ships. She thought about the children who had been sold like animals. She thought about the 11,000 survivors she had helped rescue. The hollow look in their eyes. The scars on their bodies. The way some of them flinched whenever anyone touched them. And she thought about the 49,000 who had not survived. The ones whose bodies had been found in mass graves on a frozen moon. The ones who had been worked to death, or starved, or simply disposed of when they were no longer useful. The Concord wanted to punish humanity for destroying 2 outposts. Elena was going to show them why those outposts deserved to burn. She waited in that small gray room for 7 hours. She did not eat. She did not sleep. She simply sat and prepared herself for what was coming. When the door finally opened and a voice announced that the council was ready to see her, Elena Vance stood up, straightened her simple black uniform, and walked toward the chamber where 12 ancient species would sit in judgment of her world. She was not afraid. She was ready. The council chamber was the largest room Elena had ever seen. It stretched upward into darkness, so high that she could not see the ceiling. The walls were lined with seats, thousands of them filled with observers from across the galaxy. Species of every shape and size watched as she entered. Some had eyes, some had sensors, some perceived the world in ways that humans could not even understand. But Elena's attention was fixed on the 12 towering thrones arranged in a half-circle at the far end of the chamber. These were the seats of the Council of 12, the elder races, the species that had guided the galaxy for millions of years before humanity had learned to make fire. Each throne was designed for its occupant. One was made of living crystal that pulsed with soft light. Another was a pool of thick liquid in which something massive floated. A third was simply a platform covered in a carpet of small mushroom-like growths. And in front of these thrones, set low into the floor, was a circular platform made of plain gray stone. The accused circle. This was where Elena would stand. Below the council, below the observers, a reminder that she was here to answer for crimes, not to speak as an equal. Elena walked to the circle without hesitation. Her footsteps echoed in the vast space. She could feel thousands of eyes watching her. She kept her back straight and her face calm. When she reached the circle, she stopped and stood at its center. She did not bow. She did not kneel. She simply waited. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then a voice filled the chamber. It was not loud, but it carried to every corner of the room. It came from the throne of living crystal, from a being made of shifting geometric shapes that caught the light and scattered it into rainbows. "I am High Arbiter Solith, of the Eternal Shapers," the voice said. "I speak for the Council in matters of law. Human, you have been brought before us to answer serious charges. Do you understand this?" "I do," Elena said. "You are Ambassador Elena Vance, representing the species known as humanity?" "I am. And you have come alone? You bring no advocates? No legal representatives?" "I speak for my people. I need no one else." A murmur ran through the observers. The High Arbiter's crystal form flickered. "Very well. Let the charges be read." A screen appeared in the air above Elena's head. It showed images, sensor logs, maps, debris floating in space. The wreckage of the Threnkai outposts. Another voice spoke. This one was harsh and clicking, like stones being struck together. It came from a throne shaped like a nest of metal and bone, where a creature with a hard black shell and many limbs sat watching Elena with compound eyes. "I am Praetor Vex All of the Threnkai Dominion," the creature said. 43 cycles ago, human warships entered the Velix corridor without authorization. They attacked our outposts without warning. They killed 612 of our soldiers. They destroyed property worth billions of credits. They committed an act of war against a sovereign member of the Concord. The Praetor's mandibles clicked angrily. This was not a mistake. This was not a misunderstanding. This was deliberate aggression by a species that has been part of our community for barely a moment. A species that clearly does not understand its place. Elena remained silent. The Praetor continued. The Threnkai Dominion demands full reparations for our losses. We demand that the human military commanders responsible for this attack be surrendered to our custody for punishment. And we demand that the Concord impose sanctions on humanity that will prevent them from ever threatening civilized species again. The chamber buzzed with reaction. Some observers seemed to agree with the Praetor. Others whispered among themselves. The High Arbiter raised a crystalline appendage, and silence fell. The charges have been stated. Now let the council speak. One by one, the elder races gave their opinions. The Vorme Keen delegate spoke first. He was tall and thin, with cold eyes that looked at Elena like she was an insect. Humanity has always been a problem, he said. They breed quickly. They expand quickly. They do not understand patience or wisdom. They are like a virus they spread and consume without thought for the consequences. This attack proves what many of us have suspected for years. Humans are not ready to be part of galactic society. Perhaps they never will be. Next came the Ool Collective, a swarm of tiny creatures that moved together like a single being. Their voice was a chorus of thousands of small sounds that somehow formed words. We have studied human history. Their past is filled with violence, war after war after war. They have killed billions of their own kind, over resources, over beliefs, over nothing at all. And now they bring this violence to the stars. We calculate that if left unchecked, humanity will destabilize this region of space within 200 years. The Korath delegate laughed, a deep, rumbling sound that shook the air. They are children playing with weapons they do not understand. Amusing, perhaps, but dangerous. A child with a knife can still cut you, and so it went. One after another, the elder races spoke about humanity, about their flaws, about their violence, about their arrogance. Not one of them spoke to Elena directly. They talked about her species as if she were not even there, as if she were a specimen to be studied, not a person to be heard. Through it all, Elena stood motionless. She did not interrupt. She did not object. She did not show any emotion at all. But she listened. She listened very carefully. And as she listened, she noticed something. A pattern. A careful choice of words. The Threnkai Praetor had talked about his outposts, his soldiers, his property. He had not talked about what those outposts were actually doing in the Velix corridor. He had not talked about the ships that had been coming and going from those outposts for years. The ships that carried cargo that screamed. He had not talked about the manifests, the records, the evidence that Elena carried on a small data chip in her pocket. When the last council member finished speaking, the High Arbiter turned to Elena. "Human," Solith said, "you have heard the charges against your species. You have heard the testimony of races that have guided this galaxy for millions of years. Races that were building civilizations when your ancestors were still learning to walk upright. What do you have to say in your defense?" Elena looked up at the 12 towering figures. She looked at the thousands of observers watching from the galleries. She felt the weight of their judgment pressing down on her. And then she smiled, just slightly. "Just enough, High Arbiter," she said. "I thank the council for allowing me to speak. But before I give my defense, I have a story I would like to tell. A true story. About what really happened in the Velix corridor. The Threnkai Praetor's mandibles clicked sharply. This is unnecessary. The facts are clear. The facts, Elena said calmly, are exactly what I intend to discuss. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her data chip. With the Council's permission, I would like to show you what we found when our ships reached those outposts. What we found in the cargo holds. What we found in the cells beneath the stations. She paused. I would like to show you what the Threnkai did to our children. The chamber went quiet. Elena held up the data chip. It was small and gray, barely larger than her thumbnail. But the information it contained was enough to shake the foundations of the Galactic Concord. High Arbiter, she said. May I present my evidence? Solith's crystal form flickered with colors Elena could not name. The High Arbiter seemed uncertain, something that clearly did not happen often. You may proceed, Solith said finally. Elena inserted the chip into a port on the edge of the accused circle. Immediately, a holographic display appeared above her head. It showed a star map of the Velix corridor. 14 months ago, Elena began. 3 colony ships left Earth's outer territories. They were carrying families, farmers, engineers, teachers, doctors. People who wanted to build new lives on new worlds. 62,000 people in total. She touched the display, and 3 small dots appeared on the map. The colony ships were named Hope, Dawn, and New Horizon. They were heading to a system called Kepler 442, which had been surveyed and approved for human settlement. Their route took them through the edge of the Velix corridor. Elena paused. Her voice remained calm, but there was something hard beneath it now. They never arrived. The display changed. It showed sensor logs, fragments of data recovered from damaged equipment. At first, we thought there had been an accident. A navigation error. Engine failure. Something that could explain why 3 ships and 62,000 people had simply vanished. We sent search parties. We found nothing. Elena looked at the Threnkai Praetor. His compound eyes were fixed on her. But he said nothing. Then, 6 months ago, we received a message. It came from a trader who operated in the outer regions, a member of a species I will not name, because he has asked to remain anonymous. He told us that he had seen humans for sale at a market on the edge of Threnkai space. The chamber stirred. Whispers rippled through the observers. We did not believe him at first. Slavery has been illegal under Concord law for thousands of years. No member species would dare to violate such a fundamental rule. Or so we thought. Elena touched the display again. New images appeared, photographs, documents, records. We sent investigators. What they found was difficult to describe. In user, the images showed holding cells. Rows of metal cages stacked on top of each other. Inside the cages were humans, men, women, children. They were thin. Their clothes were torn. Their eyes were empty. The Threnkai outposts in the Velix corridor were not military installations, Elena said. They were processing centers. Places where captured humans were sorted, cataloged, and prepared for sale. She pulled up another document. It was written in Threnkai script, but a translation appeared beside it. This is a manifest from one of the outposts. It lists living cargo by age, health, and estimated work capacity. It includes pricing. It includes the names of buyers. The Threnkai Praetor rose from his throne. His mandibles were clicking furiously. This is fabrication. Lies created to justify human aggression. The Council cannot possibly. The manifest is stamped with official Threnkai imperial seals. Elena interrupted. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. The signatures belong to Threnkai military officers. The buyers include merchants from 4 different species, all of whom have since been identified and questioned by human authorities. She looked directly at the Praetor. Would you like me to read some of the entries? There is one that describes a shipment of 300 children, ages 4 to 12. It notes that children are preferred by certain buyers because they are easier to train and less likely to resist. The chamber was silent. Even the whispers had stopped. Elena continued. When our ships reached the outposts, we found 11,000 survivors. 11,000 out of 62,000. They had been held for months. They had been starved, they had been beaten, they had been separated from their families and sold to whoever would pay. She pulled up more images. These were harder to look at. Bodies in mass graves. Skeletons piled in frozen storage units. Evidence of things that Elena did not describe in words. The other 51,000 did not survive. Some died during capture. Some died during transport. Some died because they were too old or too sick to be useful, and the Threnkai do not waste resources on worthless cargo. Elena's voice finally showed emotion, not anger, but grief. We found them on a moon called Velix 7. They had been dumped there like garbage. Men, women, children, babies, thrown into pits and covered with ice. We spent 3 weeks recovering the bodies. 3 weeks of digging through frozen ground to find our people. She turned to face the council again. So yes, High Arbiter, we attacked those outposts. We destroyed them. We killed the soldiers who were guarding the slaves. We did it without asking permission from the Concord. We did it without filing complaints, or requesting investigations, or waiting for diplomatic solutions. Her eyes moved across the 12 thrones. We did it because 62,000 of our people were taken, and no one came to help us. We did it because while your investigators would have spent years gathering evidence and debating procedures, more of our children would have been sold. We did it because it was right. The Threnkai Praetor was still standing. His shell seemed to vibrate with rage. You admit it, he shouted. You admit to violating Concord law. You admit to unauthorized military action. It does not matter what you claim we did. You have confessed to your crimes. Elena looked at him. Yes, I have. Then there is nothing more to discuss. The council must rule against humanity. Justice demands. Justice, Elena said quietly, is exactly what we gave to the 600 soldiers who were guarding those slaves. Justice is what we gave to the officers who signed those manifests. Justice is what we gave to everyone who touched our children with hands that meant to harm them. She turned back to the High Arbiter. I did not come here to deny what we did. I came here to explain why we did it. And I came here to ask the council a question. A question that I believe deserves an answer. Solith's crystal form had grown dim during Elena's presentation. The High Arbiter seemed troubled, in a way that went beyond simple surprise. What question? Solith asked. Elena put her hands behind her back. She stood straight and tall, despite being so much smaller than the beings who loomed above her. The Threnkai have been running slave operations in the Velix corridor for years. They have taken people from dozens of unaffiliated worlds. They have sold living beings like property, and they have done this within range of Concord sensors. Using ships that pass through Concord-monitored space, with records that any competent investigator could find. She paused. My question is simple. Did the Concord know? And if so, why did no one stop them? The silence that followed was the heaviest thing Elena had ever felt. Nobody moved. The council chamber, which had been filled with whispers and murmurs throughout the proceedings, was now completely silent. Thousands of observers sat frozen in their seats. The 12 elder races on their towering thrones seemed to have turned to stone. Elena waited. She had asked her question. Now she wanted an answer. High Arbiter Solith's crystal form flickered uncertainly. The colors that usually danced across its surface had faded to a dull gray. For the first time since the proceedings began, the ancient being seemed at a loss for words. Finally, Solith spoke. Ambassador Vance, your question touches on matters of intelligence and security that are not appropriate for public discussion. The Concord's monitoring operations are uses Endris, uses matings 79, uses matings 79. I am not asking about operations, Elena interrupted. Her voice was calm but firm. I am asking a simple question. Did you know that the Threnkai were taking slaves from the Velix corridor? Yes or no? The Vormakin delegate shifted in his seat. The situation is more complex than you understand, human. The Velix corridor is a buffer zone precisely because it falls outside normal jurisdiction. What happens there? People were being taken, Elena said. Families were being torn apart. Children were being sold. This is not complex. This is clear. Did you know? The Threnkai Dominion's internal practices are a matter for the Threnkai Dominion. The Ul Collective buzzed. The Concord does not interfere in the sovereign affairs of member species. This has been our policy for. Slavery is not an internal practice, Elena said. It is a crime. Your own laws say so. The Galactic Charter. Article 7. Section 3. No sentient being shall be held as property. No member species shall engage in the trade of persons. Violations of this article shall be considered crimes against the Concord itself. She recited the words from memory. She had spent weeks studying the Concord's laws, looking for this exact moment. I have read your charter. I have read your laws. And I have read the enforcement records. Do you know what I found? No one answered. In the last 1,000 years, the Concord has prosecuted exactly 0 cases of slavery against any member species. 0. Not because slavery does not exist, we all know it does, but because prosecuting a member species is difficult. It is expensive. It creates political problems. It is much easier to look the other way. The Threnkai praetor's mandibles clicked. You dare to lecture us? You, whose species has only existed for a heartbeat? You, who still fight wars among yourselves? You have no right to judge civilizations that were ancient before your world even formed. Elena turned to face him. There was no anger in her eyes, only something cold and steady. You are right, she said. Humanity is young. We have made terrible mistakes. We have done awful things to each other. Our history is full of blood, and suffering, and cruelty. She took a step forward. But we have also learned. We have grown. We have looked at our past and said, never again. When we find slavery, we end it. When we find injustice, we fight it. When we see the powerful crushing the weak, we do not look away. She turned back to the council. Can you say the same? The Korath delegate laughed. But it was an uncomfortable sound. Pretty words, human. But words do not change facts. You broke our laws. You killed our people. Whatever your reasons, you must face the consequences. I accept the consequences, Elena said. I accepted them when I came here alone. I knew that you might sanction my world. I knew that you might cripple our colonies. I knew that you might try to crush us for what we did. She spread her hands. But I also knew something else. I knew that if I came here and told the truth, if I showed you what the Threnkai did and asked you to explain yourselves, you would not be able to answer. Because the answer is shameful. The answer is damning. The answer is something that no elder race wants to admit. High Arbiter Solith leaned forward. And what answer is that, Ambassador? Elena looked up at the crystalline being. For a moment, she seemed almost sad. You knew, she said softly. All of you knew. The Concord has the most advanced sensor networks in the galaxy. You monitor every ship, every station, every communication in Concord space. You knew what the Threnkai were doing in the Velix corridor. You knew about the slave markets. You knew about the captured families. Her voice hardened. And you did nothing. Because the Threnkai are useful. Because they have resources you want. Because stopping them would have been inconvenient. Because the victims were from unaffiliated worlds, people who did not matter to you. People who had no voice in your council. People who could scream for help and never be heard. She pointed at the evidence, still floating above the accused circle. You let this happen. For years. For decades. Maybe for centuries. You let the Threnkai hunt and capture and sell living beings because it was easier than stopping them. Because you decided that some lives were worth less than others. The chamber was absolutely still. Even the air seemed to have stopped moving. Elena's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. But in that silence, every word carried to every corner of the vast room. My people sent distress signals when the colony ships were attacked. We sent them on every frequency. We begged for help. We pleaded for someone, anyone, to respond. She paused. No one came. No Concord patrol ships. No rescue teams. No investigators. 62,000 people were taken, and the galaxy did nothing. She looked at each of the 12 thrones in turn. So, when you ask me why humanity acts alone, why we do not wait for permission, why we do not trust your laws and your procedures and your promises of justice, I have a very simple answer. Elena Vance, alone in the center of that vast chamber, surrounded by beings who had ruled the stars for millions of years, spoke the truth that none of them wanted to hear. When we call for help, no one comes. When our children are taken, no one cares. When we are hurt and bleeding and dying, no one lifts a finger to save us. Her voice was steady. Her eyes were dry. But there was something in her face that made even the oldest beings in the room look away. You ask why we do not trust you. You ask why we fight our own battles. You ask why we refuse to wait for your permission. She shook her head slowly. The answer should be obvious. We learned a long time ago that in this galaxy, the only ones who will protect humanity are humans. And if that makes us criminals in your eyes, if that makes us dangerous and violent and unworthy of your respect, then so be it. She straightened her shoulders. But I will not apologize for saving our people. I will not apologize for destroying those outposts. And I will not apologize for coming here today and asking you to explain yourselves. She looked directly at the High Arbiter. So I ask you again, one final time. When the Threnkai were taking our children, where were you? The question hung in the air like a blade, and no one, not one of the 12 elder races, not one of the thousands of observers, not even the Threnkai praetor who had demanded blood, could find the courage to answer. The silence stretched on. Elena stood in the accused circle with her hands clasped behind her back. She had said everything she came to say. She had shown them the evidence. She had asked her question. Now she waited. Around her, the council chamber seemed frozen in time. The thousands of observers sat motionless in their seats. The 12 elder races on their towering thrones stared down at her with expressions she could not read. Even the air felt heavy, as if the weight of her words had pressed down on everything in the room. The Threnkai praetor was the first to move. His mandibles clicked once, twice, 3 times. His compound eyes shifted from Elena to the High Arbiter, and back again. This changes nothing, he said. His voice was harsh, but there was something uncertain beneath it now. Whatever we may or may not have known, whatever policies may or may not exist, the fact remains that humanity broke Concord law. They attacked sovereign territory. They killed our soldiers. There must be consequences. No one responded. The praetor turned to the other council members. Well? Say something. The Vormakeen? The Ool? Surely you are not going to let this juvenile species lecture us about morality? Surely you are not going to let them escape punishment because they told a sad story? The Vormakeen delegate did not meet the praetor's eyes. He was staring at the evidence still floating above Elena's head, the manifests, the photographs, the bodies in the frozen graves. The situation, he said slowly, is more complicated than I initially understood. Perhaps a recess would be appropriate. Time to review the evidence. Time to consider the implications. A recess? The praetor's shell rattled with anger. There is nothing to review, nothing to consider. The humans confessed to their crimes. Justice demands. Justice, the Ool collective interrupted. Their swarm voice was quieter than before, almost uncertain. We have invoked that word many times today. But we find ourselves unsure of its meaning now. If we punish the humans for saving their people, what does that say about justice? What does that say about us? The praetor turned to the Korath delegate. You, then, you have always understood strength. You have always understood power. Tell them that weakness cannot be rewarded. Tell them that humans must be taught their place. The Korath was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke, and his deep voice rumbled through the chamber. I have lived for 8,000 years. I have seen wars that burned entire star systems. I have seen empires rise and fall, like waves on a shore. And in all that time, I have learned one thing. The universe does not care about place. The universe does not care about age or tradition or power. The universe only cares about will. He looked at Elena. This human came here alone. She faced 12 of the most powerful beings in the galaxy with nothing but her words and her truth. She did not beg. She did not threaten. She did not try to bargain or manipulate. She simply told us what happened and asked us to explain ourselves. The Korath shook his massive head. I cannot explain myself. I cannot justify what we allowed to happen, and I will not punish her for having more courage than the rest of us combined. The Threnkai Praetor made a sound that might have been a scream. This is madness. This is betrayal. The Conquered exists to maintain order, to protect member species from aggression. If you let the humans escape punishment, you destroy everything we have built. Perhaps, the High Arbiter said quietly, what we have built deserves to be destroyed. Every head in the chamber turned to look at Solith. The crystalline being had been silent for so long that some had forgotten it was there. Now it rose from its throne, not floating, but climbing down to stand on the floor of the chamber. On the same level as Elena, it was still much larger than her. Its form towered over her small human body like a mountain over a pebble. But somehow, standing there together, they seemed almost equal. Ambassador Vance, Solith said, I have served as High Arbiter for 11,000 years. I have ruled on cases involving genocide, conquest, extinction. I have sent species to their doom with the stroke of a gavel. I believed that I understood justice. I believed that I knew the difference between right and wrong. The crystal form flickered with colors, reds and blues and purples that Elena did not have names for. Today, you have shown me that I was wrong. You have shown me that justice is not about laws or procedures or precedents. Justice is about standing up for those who cannot stand for themselves. It is about fighting for what is right, even when the powerful tell you to be silent. Solith turned to face the council. I cannot rule against humanity. I cannot punish them for doing what we should have done. I cannot condemn them for having the courage that we lacked. The Praetor lunged forward. Then what? You simply let them go? You ignore our dead? You spit on everything the Concord represents? Solith looked at him, and in that look was something that made the Praetor step back despite himself. The Concord will investigate the Threnkai Dominion's activities in the Velix corridor. Every manifest, every transaction, every life that was bought and sold will be accounted for, and those responsible at every level will face judgment. The Praetor's mandibles went still. You cannot. I can, and I will. Solith turned back to Elena. Ambassador Vance, you asked us where we were when your children were taken. You asked us why no one came to help. I cannot change what happened. I cannot bring back the 51,000 who died. But I can promise you this. It will never happen again. Not to humans. Not to anyone. Elena looked up at the ancient being. Her face was unreadable. Promises are easy, she said. Actions are hard. I will believe your words when I see them proven true. That is fair, Solith said. More than fair. The High Arbiter turned and began to climb back to its throne. Halfway there, it stopped. The human ambassador came here today expecting to be condemned. She came expecting sanctions and punishment and rejection. Instead, she will leave having changed the galaxy. Having changed us. Having shown us who we truly are, and who we could be, if we had the courage. Solith settled back into its crystalline throne. History will remember this day. History will remember what was revealed here, and what was decided. History will remember that a single human, standing alone against the mightiest powers in existence, refused to be silent. The chamber waited. The Threnkai Praetor waited. The 12 elder races waited. And Elena Vance, the small woman in the plain black uniform, waited too. High Arbiter Solith's voice rang out across the chamber, quiet, but clear. A single word that ended the proceedings and changed the course of galactic history. Adjourned. Elena turned and walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the silence. Behind her, she heard the Praetor shouting something, demanding something, threatening something. She did not listen. It did not matter anymore. She passed through the great doors and out into the corridor beyond. The Vormachine official who had greeted her with such contempt was standing there. His face was pale. His 4 hands were trembling. Ambassador, he said, I did not know. I swear to you, I did not know what they were doing. Elena looked at him for a long moment. Now you do, she said. What you do with that knowledge is up to you. She walked past him, toward her small gray ship, toward the long journey home. Behind her, the Galactic Concord would never be the same. The Threnkai would face investigation. Other slave operations would be exposed. Species that had been silent for millennia would begin to speak, and across the galaxy, in dark corners and forgotten places, a new hope would begin to spread. A rumor, a promise. If you are in trouble, call the humans. If you are suffering, reach out to them. If no one else will help you, they will come. They will always come, because they remember what it was like when no one came for them.